Hello everybody, my name is Ratnus, and a few weeks ago I made this prediction of what I thought the Season 4 Mythic Plus metagame would look like, and today we're going to take a look at how that's panning out so far. It's worth noting that, of course, there is still a lot to come in this season. A lot of stuff is going to shift around, but already there's a lot of stuff that is clearly wrong about this that we can fix early. A couple things to note about what isn't here yet. Most people still don't have stuff like Mythic Fated items, right? Mythic Fated Gavel of the First Arbiter, Mythic Fated Edge of Night, Mythic Fated Cruciform Vein Rippers, which a lot more people will have those in like 6 weeks when they can use their dinars and their mythic upgrade tokens, even if they're only clearing a few mythic bosses, to be able to make those sorts of items, to be able to make their trinkets, that kind of stuff. So certain specs do benefit from that and will gain some stonks off of that. But we already have some pretty good information, and actually we have some Tournament Realm information, which includes access to whatever items you want as well. So first off, let's start off in S. Are we happy with Blood Decay and Holy Priest up here? I think I'm happy with these two specs being up here. Yeah, these specs are both looking really good. If you look at the front page of the live keys leaderboard, we have 3 players that aren't playing those, and then a bunch more players that are playing DK, and then almost everybody is playing Holy Priest as well, with, again, one lone player on each of these other specs. And if you look over at the Great Push Proving Grounds, you see an even more convincing showing here where these people all have their Mythic Fated Gavel of the First Arbiter, which I'll have next week. Can't wait for that. And yeah, the spec continues to be incredibly good. I do think that, yeah, Prot Paladin and Prot Warrior are both actually really close, but I do think Blood Decay is still a cut above, and Holy Priest also still a cut above. So let's just quickly move the tanks around real quick. I think Prot Warrior actually is probably up here in A alongside these other ones, being just a little bit behind. Vengeance still seems fine in B, and Guardian still seems fine in C. Actually, it's Brewmaster that's I would be debating even taking down below Prot Warrior and Prot Paladin, take them down a tier. I think I am going to do that. I actually do think Prot Warrior and Prot Paladin are kind of nuts, like really good. There's a lot of stuff they're so good against in these specific dungeons. There's a lot of OP spell reflects. There's a lot of stuff that just have like Shade of Medivh with Prot Paladin interrupts. All of these tough old bosses with a lot of healing requirement. The off healing that Prot Paladin can provide is really, really substantial. So I actually think there is some separation here between those specs, but I'll put Brewmaster right up near the top of B. On the other hand, healers. So we have Holy Priest. Then we had Resto Shaman and Holy Paladin up here in A, Resto Druid in B, Disc and Mistweaver down in C. Now, if you look at some statistically generated tier lists, for instance, there's this really cool site, mplus.subcreation.net. They will tell you that Disc is like real bad, but the problem with using this site for this purpose is that anytime there's multiple different specs of the same class, the statistics will always make the worst specs look worse than they actually are qualitatively. So this is a really cool source for seeing what the kind of statistics are saying about each spec. Actually, one of the best things about this site is you can just click through and see what people are actually running in different keys. So if you're trying to like do a quick key on a spec you haven't played before, you just go to the site, click through on that spec, put on those talents, and it's a much better starting point than just YOLOing it. But the thing to look at here is you're going to see specs like Sin and Sub, both in F, Affliction in F, right? When in practice those specs are qualitatively not that bad compared to their better versions. It's just so many of the good players are playing the best one, right? And similarly, like Holy Priest is making Disc look really bad. Maybe though Disc might actually be down in D rather than C. I do think that this is a spec that does need some assistance from Mythic Plus. I saw in Dragonflight they were briefly getting a silence on Wicked Star, but then it seems like that's gone away as well. That seems like something that could be some use for them, but it does seem like in particular the healing throughput of the new dungeons is something that Disc seems to struggle a little bit even more with than they did last season. So early days yet. I'm not a healer scientist, but this is my current guess of what it's looking like. All right, DPS specs. So when we made this video last, the first set of nerfs to Serve and Destro had just been announced, and the ones that happened this last reset, hadn't happened yet, hadn't been announced. The second round of nerfs to those two specs. very clearly, this was horribly wrong. This was still up here before those nerfs. Also, serve is still really good too. I think probably it's tough for me to determine. Like both of these specs are still really, really, really good. I don't know if S is appropriate for either of them because I do think you could make a group without either of these. You know, if you look at these top rankings, there's no hunter here, no warlock here, no hunter here, no warlock here, no warlock here, no warlock here, right? Hunter and warlock, no warlock. So differentiating between warlock, mage, windwalker, outlaw, survival, those specs seem to me like they are all really good, and you could construct a good group with any three of those five. And actually, when we're talking about warlock here, demo also I think should be in this conversation. So for that reason, I think in the current situation, we should be doing something like this. Outlaw seems like it's the premier rogue spec. Subtlety, not as much, although sub, I actually think is still not that, like, the statistical tier list generation will make this look a lot worse if you actually look at representation right now, but I think that's just because people are playing outlaw. If they weren't doing that, sub would be doing just great. And then, yeah, I'm going to move Sin actually down to C, I think, because I think there's some separation. There should be some separation between those two specs as well. So yeah, this is how I feel about these specs. I guess if I want to do like the best ones up at the front, there's not really I'm not consistent with having the top of the tier actually be the top and the bottom being the bottom. But if I was, yeah, I don't know, something like this for the DPS specs. At least Serve and Destro still seem like they are dominating premier specs. When we look over at the Proving Grounds for the Great Push, you see a similar story here, right? It's like Serve, Destro, Demo, Fire, Outlaw. You know, some combination of these specs are being used for the really high ones. A little bit of Windwalker as well, although it's worth noting the Proving Grounds here are in a Workshop Tyrannical, and an upper is fortified, but it's still an upper. So you wouldn't expect to see the kind of AO. You'd expect to see single target stuff like the demo locks in those dungeons in particular. Okay, how about the rest of the list? Has anything changed in the B and C tiers? I think I'm still largely happy with where I have the rest of these specs. I do think so. I moved Affliction up off of some rumors I was hearing, and that was just I was being gaslit. So keep them down in C. Let's check in on Shadow Priest. How is Shadow Priest actually doing in keys right now? Let's compare Shadow Priests to, so we can do DPS Priests. So we got DPS Priests time in 27s, although 27 obviously 27 Depot as well. So the top Shadow Priest right now is 2800. Then we got a bunch at 26. Let's compare that to other specs that I have in the C tier and see just how it's doing here. So let's compare it to, I guess, like Rep Pally, Ellie Shaman, Balanced Druid. Let's just compare real quick against those. So Rep Pally doing a little bit better than Rep Pally, although pretty similar, maybe 100 points above on average. Balanced Druid doing also about the same as Balanced Druid. What was the last one? Elemental Shaman, about the same as Elemental Shaman as well. So yeah, we're seeing pretty similar, I would say. So I think the Shadow Priest has been holding on. The buffs to the AoE have been good enough to keep it out of the D tier. I think the C is looking about right. What are the Affliction Warlocks looking like? Again, this is the thing where it's like, oh, the statistics of this is like anybody who could be playing Affliction, you know, they could actually change spec, so that makes it look worse than the demos and the destros, right, actually are, right? Because like, so you have to watch out for that a little bit. But yeah, definitely not a case of like, oh, it's actually sleeper pretty good. It's something that is still clearly a cut below both demo and destro. So all right, I think I'm pretty happy sending this as my tier list now. My thoughts on what the meta currently looks like. Again, this is a high key focused, you know, key pushing thing. If we were to take this to lower keys, largely it looks the same. I would say if you're in lower keys, deviations I would make from this, I probably wouldn't recommend playing Demo. I'd just play Destro. It's probably easier. Probably a better pick for most of the low keys if you're personally wondering. If you're just inviting people and somebody is a warlock, you know, don't worry about either one of those will be good. But if you're wondering which of these two to play, unless you're doing, I would say Destro is the first one you should learn if you're a warlock trying to get into M+, because it's probably good in more of the high keys, and it's definitely good in more of the low keys. The tanks, yeah, pretty happy with keeping them about where they are. A good prop paladin actually can really carry a pug. So can a good blood DK though, because a good paladin can heal the group and do all the interrupts, whereas a good blood DK can just solo the dungeon if everybody else dies. So either of those works for carrying a key. Vengeance I actually think gets a little bit better in low keys, but maybe still about in B. Yeah. I don't know. This season's pretty balanced. This season, it's not like we still make the tier list with the different tiers, but I would say this is a season where mostly like the B and C distinction here is pretty thin. It's not like one of those seasons where there's a bunch of specs that just don't really function in M+. Like this season seems like a pretty good one. They've delivered some buffs to some of the specs that needed it the most. Certainly there's still work that could be done here. I would love to see another round of M+, mostly just buffs. I think if they wanted to deliver nerfs to these two specs in particular, it would be probably pretty welcome. Probably don't need to worry. I wouldn't really want to nerf any of like these 5 DPS specs at this point or anything like that, but buffing stuff like enhancement AoE, those kinds of things, affliction, assassination, I think those sorts of things would be pretty cool to see. I don't really expect that will happen this season though. I think if that's something you're hoping to see, probably unlikely. I bet they're probably just hoping to stick with this balance and ride it through till Dragonflight. So yeah, anyways, I will maybe make another one of these videos if more changes, if we learn more, if people getting access to their Fated Mythic BIS sets changes anything. But other than that, there's a good chance this one will ride through till Dragonflight as well. So hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.